All right, for those of you that don't know me, I am Austin Manning, and when Pastor Greg first approached me about doing chapel, I was a little kind of taken aback because it's been a while since I've been in here, but I had to remember what time chapel started, but he got me squared away on that, so I agreed to it, and he asked me to talk about studying abroad, and it's something I've done now 4 times, twice while in college, and I think it's a great experience for many reasons. And I think the most important reason why it's an experience everyone should have is it gives you the opportunity to really cultivate your own ideas and your own image of self. You don't really realize until you get out of the communities we've grown up in just how hard it is to kind of defend some of the things you believe. Going over to England, which has I should say London to be a little more specific about that, which has a relatively large atheist and agnostic community. It's amazing what kind of stories and experiences that I assume everybody has that we have as a common tradition that just isn't there. Talking about Moses and Abraham, people like that. Well, because we were watching the movie The Prince of Egypt. It's a Disney movie, and just those kinds of stories that they don't have in common, which is makes it interesting to start talking about your beliefs on that, because they say things like, so let me get this straight, you actually believe that frogs fell from the sky and the river turned to blood, and you say, well, yeah, I guess I do believe that. And they say, so really, that's what you believe? And I say, well, yeah, and you have to start kind of dissecting what you believe and why you believe it, and it gives you an amazing opportunity to really dissect your own beliefs and present them in a new way, because you're going to get questions from left field, if you will, things that you've not been exposed to. It goes along to politics as well. It goes into just social behaviors. One of the biggest conversations I had actually concerned kind of pub culture versus American youth alcohol culture with a guy named Patrick that I worked with, and just the different ideas there. And it kind of came full circle, because every day I worked with him, we had like 2 hours of downtime between shows, and it was just talk. And he was asking me all these questions about everything, because he was really interested, but he had a very different background than anybody I encounter back home. We grow up in these communities we get used to. We have the people that we may not agree with that have the questions that challenge us, but we start getting these stock answers, and we start kind of saying things that become a little more rhetoric than belief. And then when you go abroad, they ask you questions that you're not used to. And that's a really cool experience to have, I think, that opportunity to look at your own beliefs from a different perspective, and not by choice, because it kind of puts you on the spot, and you have to start thinking immediately. And then afterwards you take a step back and you say, do I really think what I said was true? And you either affirm your own beliefs and you become stronger for that, or you realize maybe you need to look at something a little bit different that you hadn't looked at before. As far as the cultures go, I think that it's important to note the difference between places like London and Amsterdam as opposed to the Netherlands and England. Because if you go up into rural Scotland or you go up into rural England, people there are very religious, and they're very differently politically minded than those in London or those in Amsterdam. Amsterdam's kind of a niche inside the Netherlands, or Brussels is such a multinational city that you can't take Brussels as the example of Belgium, because they're not really a good measure of the entire culture. And when you go out into the countryside, you find that churches and cathedrals over time have become status symbols of wealth for that community, which is odd for me, but simultaneously, they are the community center. For the theater I worked in, our storage was in the local Islington church, and they had dance recital in there, and they had community group meetings, and it was very similar in the way that the church I grew up in functions, which is kind of a comforting thing because you go over there and you see these giant cathedrals like Westminster Abbey. You see these big churches, these old churches that feel just like a piece of history and not a living, breathing building. And then you get surrounded by these cultures of people that have a kind of different look on religion, something that they're has caused wars inside their country for hundreds of years, that has caused them to be a little bit apprehensive of authority figures, and especially authority figures that come from a religious standpoint. And it's good to see that they're still vibrant, they're still alive, and that they are still a place where people can come and meet and be social and find comfort. Kind of the next idea that really came under, I guess, analysis while I was over there was the idea of vocation, which is something that I think as TLU students we've all come in contact with at this point. I know I've come in contact with vocation a lot in my experience at TLU, and especially working in the theater and working with almost everybody at the Little Angel Theater was proclaimed atheists. One of my questions back to them was like, well, how do you reconcile that idea of vocation? How do you reconcile the idea of your work meaning something more than a wage? And I think the concept is still there. That idea that they don't just go to work so they can go home with a couple extra pounds in their pocket. They go to work because they're doing something they feel passionate about. That's something that they can improve their community with. And I think that the idea of vocation is a concept that transcends whether or not you have a firm spiritual belief, which was, again, comforting to me because vocation is something, like I said, has kind of been drilled into me over the times at TLU, especially in a culture like England, where their shadow prime minister is proud to be atheist and made sure that the newspapers were writing him down as an atheist, yet he still had the same language that we speak about of this passion, this drive to improve everything, and a calling to do his work. Where the calling came from, that's where I was getting that kind of question, but I couldn't ask him. I never got the opportunity to meet him, obviously. But I think for the everyday man, the people I was able to talk to, they have that idea, they have that calling, that concept. One of the resounding quotes in my spiritual journey, I've been a youth camp director and counselor for a while, and I've had my struggles with my faith, and I've had to really work at it. And I think one of the resounding quotes that I've always found useful, and I think it really sums up the English approach to religion, is from Thomas Jefferson. And he says, "Question with boldness even the existence of a God, because if there be one, he must more approve of the homage of reason than that of fear." And it really sinks into me, because I was also raised in a church where questioning wasn't exactly the right thing to do. You were just kind of supposed to absorb and learn. But I think that my impression from learning at TLU and the TLU community, and the way that I have learned learned in England, I think that that's a very poignant point to say, that you need to, questioning is just affirming your own beliefs. And then I kind of wrote to sum things up. I kind of wrote something out so I'd be a little more cohesive and a little more intelligent sounding at the end here. And I said that studying abroad is not simply the opening of one's mind to new and original ideas or realizations, although they can be, but an opportunity to peer inside the mask and identity we have all created in our normal social setting. To travel and live inside new and exceedingly peculiar cultures frees oneself to question the routine habits, answers, and caricatures we present to maintain the balance and harmony that we as social creatures crave. It's an opportunity to, as Mark Twain says, throw off the bowlines and sail away from safe harbors. And I think you might add, open yourself to the transformation of self that awaits you. Be conscious of the changes that are occurring and dissect them, examine them, and keep them, or throw them away. But as the scripture said, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. If you find truth in this statement, then there's literally hundreds of programs and a world of opportunities out there that Charlotte Bailey over in Shapey Hall can get you set up on. I know if you go in there and spend 5 minutes talking to her, you will walk out buzzing with excitement and anticipation. You'll have to have that conversation with your folks or your loans to figure out how you're going to do it, because I know once the bug bit me, I was caught, and like I said, I've studied abroad 4 times. So I encourage everyone to do it, and I thank you guys for giving me the chance to talk to you guys about this.